the series of 6 Magic of Color online teleclasses, part of an online workshop. So I'm really, really pleased to be joining with you because color is one of my passions. Color is something that I actually started working with 15 years ago. Just to give you a little bit of background, that's wonderful. Another passion. So yeah, a little bit of background because I really had my major energy stroke spiritual awakening, if you like, that started in 1997 into early 1998. And the very, very first holistic fair that I ever went to, I dragged a friend along with me because I was really curious about what was going on in this alternative world that I had no knowledge of, really. And I walked into this holistic fair, and the first thing that I saw was somebody who had an aurosoma table, and she had these stands out that with sort of almost, I think it was about 100 dual colored aurosoma bottles, and I could not take my eyes off them. I just looked at this and I said to her in that moment, I'm going to work with that. That's something that I'm actually going to do. And it did come to pass, and it was approximately 6 months later that I was actually introduced to a wonderful lady in South Africa who was actually an Aurosoma teacher, and her name is Penny du Plessis, and it is her color work that I'm actually sharing with you now. So that's really where I started, and I did some energy work, I did Reiki, and I did a whole lot of other things. Color was the first thing that I looked at that was just so absolutely amazing. And I knew that I had a very deep resonance with this vibrational frequency, with this energy. Um, so Penny du Plessis was an Aurosoma teacher at the time, and that was what I actually started with. And I did the first 3 levels of Aurosoma. Yeah, divine timing, Rose. Thanks for that comment. I actually don't work with Aurosoma anymore, but it was a really, really powerful foundation. So a lot of the information that you'll get in this Magic of Color course is information that is adapted from the foundational Aurosoma work and the understanding. And that's really because Penny's background. Because what happened as well is that Penny developed from her passion with color. She's also very, very passionate about color. Um, and she was an interior designer and did all sorts of things with color. So she began receiving information from, call it channeled information if you like, information from spirit about a way to work with color in a very different way. And this led to the development of what she now has initiated a whole process that she has put together called the Antonia technique. And the Antonia technique takes color and applies it on the body through the medium of massage and combines it with sacred geometry and with sound. And it is the most beautiful, beautiful process. I was one of Penny's first students, having done the color with her. I then was one of her first students for the Antonia technique workshop. But as a consequence of Penny's work, what happened is she moved away from Aurosoma and really began developing her own foundational work, both with color and with the Antonia body work, which then gives us an additional application for the color on the body. So what we're really looking at with this teleclass series is the foundational aspects of understanding color as a language that we have a very intuitive connection with, because if you really think about our language, we color our language, if you like, our emotional states with the terminology and with the descriptors that apply to color. So we might talk about being green with envy, feeling the blues, sort of feeling down, feeling depressed, feeling joyful, sunshine, sort of sunshine happiness, and those are your yellow oranges. So we associate colors with our emotional states very, very strongly. So everybody has an intuitive connection with color. So what this series of classes is going to do is going to expand your conscious language and your conscious understanding of the frequencies of color and how we can then work with that and apply it in our lives, and use it to be able to convey information that is not at the forefront of our beta state conscious mind, but that is information which is coming to us from our unconscious, so that we can better adapt and work with and balance our emotional states. So color has an enormous and a beautiful balancing effect through the frequencies that it actually brings into our being. So that's a little bit of background. So in essence, what's happened is that color that I started working with, I am also an Antonia technique teacher. So this work is based on, it's Penny's workbook, because I'm a recognized color teacher with Penny. And color permeates everything else that I do. So whether it's working with the diamond light grid, whether it's doing that kind of work, whether it's the Antonia technique, whether it's counseling, I actually work with people and sometimes help them to connect with their emotional states through the intuitive language, and their connections with color. So there's lots of different tools I'm going to share with you as well over the 6-week process. So we're going to build it up gradually so that each week between the classes you have an opportunity to integrate and to develop and expand your awareness. So that's a little bit of background. This initial slide here, I just love this image. This is by our wonderful Nyako Nakar, whose images I do feature on the Diamond Light World website. Nyako is a really lovely soul. You can really feel the energy in the images that he puts together. And I just adored this because he's got the color spectrum. And here we've got the hummingbird sipping the nectar, the humming that represents joy and love, sipping on the nectar of the pure white light, that represents the balance point. So it represents the strength of our soul. So there's wonderful symbolism in all of this. And Nyako truly is, as you note, Rose, he's a wonderful artist. He just is a beautiful soul. So I loved this image as a way to open up the teleclass, and to really get things going. And it's just so colorful. You know, I mean, you look at these pictures and all the colors and you just think, oh, it's beautiful. Especially now when we winter setting in the UK. So there's quite a few things that we can do to help us to rebalance our state of mind as a consequence of the weather, and that will become clearer as we move along as well. So this second slide, this is a presentation of the key 13 colors, because there are references made in the notes further on in the workbook, but references made in the notes to what are called the oils of transformation. These are Penny's 13 essential colors that we use in the bodywork process, but they can be used as standalone color products. So I will be putting a link up if you guys would like to actually purchase a set of the colored oils to work with. They are truly, truly beautiful. And Penny, because they're made in South Africa, they always say that they just hold the sunshine. They hold light of sunshine. And Penny's energy is, again, also truly lovely. So these are the sort of 13 main colors that we will be working with in order to get some insight and support us with our balancing. Yeah, they're lovely, love bottles, and beautiful products too. So I actually do work with them quite substantially. So these are the oils of transformation. Penny has a number of different ranges. I'm just going to show you this initial slide here. She has a number of ranges of products now, and her website is mentioned both in the workbook, as well as reference on the sign-up page, divinespace.co.za or divinespace.com. She has a range called the Divine Transformation Oils, which really link with various for want of a better word, ascended or spiritual masters. She has, and those are much lighter in color, so they carry a higher frequency or vibration. She actually has a range called the Matrix oils, which are absolutely stunning, and those are very, very light in color. Um, the oils of transformation, which is these, which are the solid colors, which is a really, really good place to start. And then she has the angels of transformation that are aura, energy, aura space. As well, that you can use as a quick lift in your energy field. So really, those are the products, and there are references made in the workbook because it's derived from Penny's work. So here we have the color mandala with the key colors on it. So before we go any further, oh, sorry, I knocked the mute button by accident. So here we are again. So before we go any further, we're going to do a little exercise because the outcome of this exercise is something that you are going to use as a focal point for the next week. So between now and the next session, we're going to work with certain colors. For that period. So before we go any further, I'd like you to just make sure that you are sitting comfortably in front of the screen. And I would like you to just now rest your hands on your thighs and close your eyes. And just take a long, slow, deep breath in and out. Just for this moment, allow yourself to relax, to clear your mind, and just spend a few moments focusing on your breathing. And with each in-breath, notice there is a delicate hint of color that you are breathing in into your body. And the colors change and swell with each breath as you connect with the rainbow of life itself. And your body responds to each of the color frequencies as you breathe. And each color merges within you, creating different tones and shades until you experience yourself as a full living mandala of color. And just be aware for the moment if there is any part of your body you can see any color more strongly, where you feel the flow of your breath with a particular color is taking your attention. And allow yourself to feel into that part of your body. Listen to it. take note if there are any key words that that aspect of your body is giving you relative to the color that is focused there. And if you find that the color is stuck or stagnant in a particular area, just ask your inner self what color is needed to help to restore balance and to move the energy again. And just allow your being to respond. Your higher self knows exactly what you need. Okay, take a deep breath in now. Breathe out as you ask your higher self to guide you to the color that is going to best support you in the head. So simply ask the question, and when you are ready, open your eyes and look at the color mandala on the screen and note which is the first color that you are drawn to on the color wheel. And make a note of that color. So, do you have a color that caught your eye immediately when you looked at the screen? Okay. Here we've got orange, pale yellow, and green. Okay. Pale yellow, are you looking at this pale yellow Rhoda? Or this one? Yeah, okay. So it's this pale yellow and green. You are really looking at the greens because this is, it's difficult to see on the screen, but yeah, it is like a lime, olivey yellow. So it does have a lot of green in it. So there's a definite green component there. So we've got green and orange. So those are the colors that I want you to record, and your homework that I've actually set you for the week will go through at the end. But I didn't want your conscious mind engaged in trying to choose a color. It was really important that it was a very intuitive, immediate choice because that is the one that's going to have the most relevant information for you. So you're going to make a note of that. What is really interesting is that if you actually look here, orange is on the opposite side of the color wheel to turquoise, and turquoise and blue essentially. And what I experienced in the very first workshop that I did, and it was truly fascinating with the Aurosoma work, because the colors that I kept going for, they were the only ones that I saw when I looked at all the bottles, were turquoise combined with violet and turquoise combined with magenta. And that was, it was all turquoise and magenta, violet, sometimes green, but it was all this side of the spectrum. And I actually didn't even see these colors. They just, it was almost as if they never even entered my consciousness. It was all I saw every time I needed to do a bottle selection. And I worked with this turquoise color for the week that we actually did the workshop. Turquoise was the color I saw when you said if energy was stuck. Ah, brilliant. It is very interesting because the hidden message, there is some very powerful information in that for you, Rose, because the hidden message in turquoise is about emotional liberation. It is about emotional freedom. And I didn't know this at the time. You know, this is, again, one of my experiences with it, and this is what has just really, really amazed me about the way that it works. Is at the end of the week, I'd worked with this color all week through actually using a physical bottle, using the physical color. And at the end of the week, we had to stand in front of these bottles and do the exercise again. And I stood in front, closed my eyes, opened them, and all I saw was orange. That was, and I looked at this and I thought, oh my goodness, this is just so bizarre. It was like suddenly that was all I saw. And I went for the solid orange bottle and I said, my body wants this so much it wants to drink it. You know, I just wanted my whole body to absorb this vibrant orange in a really, really powerful way. And that's because the walls relating to the turquoise, the liberation aspect, were broken down. So we're going to go through a lot of that, and it enabled emotional freedom. So at the same time, what this could actually be saying to you by choosing this is that you are going through a process of lots of um, emotion actually coming up to be resolved. Orange acts as a buffer against shock, the shock of actually breaking a bone. You actually had a trauma to the body. Yes, all sorts. And the breaking of the wrist would have created or caused a trauma to the body. And orange is the color that actually buffers our etheric body to help to soothe and put the pieces back together again, quite literally. So it does start making a little more sense. And then, Rhoda, as far as you're concerned, to the green, which is quite fascinating. Green obviously links us with the heart, but some of the key words associated with green are issues and concepts of space, of direction, of making decisions, of change, new perspectives, much bigger, broader perspectives. So there's a huge, bigger picture opening and possibly a need to change perspectives of something. So represents an expansion of the heart area. So as we go through, you'll start realizing just how powerful the information is that we get given through that language and through our color choices, and how prominent it becomes during the week. Yeah, feeling like you lack direction. Color is just the most amazing thing. So I'm actually going to be peppering, obviously, the workshop with some anecdotes and some stories and with my own personal experiences with it. So just start becoming very, very aware of your color choices, of the colors that you're drawn to. Looking at times in your life when you may have gone through phases or periods when you were attracted to a certain color, that was all you wanted, that was all you wanted to wear. And even it might even have been unconscious, because this is something that I actually discovered within the first 2 years of me being in the UK. First of all, there was a lot of green stuff going on, so I had a lot of green that was coming into my field. But the other one that was quite fascinating to observe was magenta. Because I actually found that in the first 2 years, you know, I really needed to stock up my winter wardrobe because I didn't have English winter type clothing. And I would go out to the shops and go and have a browse around and look at the jerseys, and I would find a style that I wanted. And sort of rifle through the different colors and what have you, and I would go, okay, that's the one I want. And the first one that I chose was magenta. And after a couple of months, I suddenly looked in my cupboard and I realized that every winter jersey I had bought was magenta. Oh, there you go. Isn't this just wonderful? I love the comments. For those that are going to connect in later, Rose has just written, I've been in a green phase and just bought magenta quilts and pillowcases for my bedroom. So you can actually see that green sits opposite red and magenta on the color wheel, and there's a lot of red in magenta. So we actually do have a balancing aspect to green through the color magenta. So it's really quite fascinating how it works when we suddenly start becoming aware of it. But I mean, even for me, being aware of and working with color, you know, to suddenly look in my cupboard and realize that unconsciously I'd just been going for the same color all the time. I think I had, you know, sort of like 6 winter jerseys all in magenta. And I suddenly looked and I went, oh my goodness, okay, what am I trying to tell myself that I'm not listening to? And really sat down with it and did some spiritual work and really connect with my inner self to get the message and to understand this process that I was going through. So some very powerful information there, because also as green indicates a need to determine direction, um, yeah, very interesting stuff, Rose. It depends on how we work with it, because it's for those again that are listening in later. Rose has just commented. Somebody told me that green meant anger, and that's an oversimplification of what it means, because we're going to talk about the polarities, about the balancing aspects, about the hidden elements within each color, and how to then understand the messages and the information that are in there. Because when green, like as I say, while green represents very often changes in direction, it's a change of heart. We talk about a change of mind, but we can't put anything into effect unless we have a change of heart. So we have a change of heart that means we then take action to change something in our life. And what we then need is we need the energy to move in that direction. So the physical energy to create that movement, to take us forward into a different space, comes from the red. And in magenta, we actually have a lot of red. So there were other messages hidden in the magenta as well. So there's just a, you know, sort of another story and a little bit of insight for you, because you'll be starting to mull over all of this in the week ahead. Uh, so there, you've got your colors to work with, and it will start making a lot more sense as we actually go through the processes. So just to introduce you um, to the slides, you've probably all of you seen the typical representation of the iceberg, that you have 1/10 of the iceberg sitting above the water. um, some really lovely comments coming into the chat room. And if I can perhaps take a break, because I think everybody will learn and understand from the discussions around some of these concepts. Rhoda's just mentioned that last week she was shouting at her partner, wailing that she didn't know what her passion was, and everybody seems to know theirs, and was very angry. And that's exactly, going back to this, that is a hidden anger that prevents the movement forward. So that needs to be healed and cleared while the heart expansion is actually going on, so that the direction can become clear. So anger is one of the hidden elements because of its balancing energy that comes from this side of the color wheel. And anger is really fuel. It's fuel for change. So when we start to understand from a psychological perspective what it is that we are really angry about or angry with, that energy becomes transformed into the fuel to in order to bring about the change in direction and to start initiating the new space. So yeah, some lovely insights through the comments that are actually coming in. So if we look at the model of the iceberg, the iceberg represents our 1/10 of ourselves that is the conscious mind and things that we are aware of. And 9/10 is everything that sits in our unconscious mind, our unconscious drivers, our unconscious anger, our unexpressed or repressed emotional states, our automatic responses, our beliefs, our habitual patterns. All of that sits within the unconscious mind. And what color helps to facilitate us in doing is it helps to give us, through its language, access to more of what is here in the unconscious so that we can bring it into conscious awareness. So one of the things that I always say is that working with color is literally like learning to speak a different language. It is learning to speak and understand the language of light. Which is essentially what it is. And that to me is quite a fascinating thing as well, because when I did my very, very first Aura-Soma course, one of the divination sets that Penny had out, and we were all invited to play with the cards during tea times, was the Mayan Oracle. And it was my first introduction to this. But you know, every day for a week at tea time, I went, shuffled that pack, and everybody was working with the pack, shuffled the pack, and every single day for a week, I pulled out the exact same card, and the card was the language of light. And if that wasn't a message for me sort of early on, then I don't know what was. So it was really, really powerful for me while I was doing this color work that that was the information that I was getting. The words you got after doing the diamond light. Absolutely. The language of light. Now, you guys will have seen the pyramid. The prism is one of the basic scientific experiments. So what we know is that pure source light is actually refracted by the pyramidal shape or the prismatic form into its component frequencies. And we only see the component frequencies that are an aspect or a part of visible light. So this is really the aspect of the spectrum that we are working with. So when we think about the diamond and the diamond light, it makes a lot of sense, because when we work with our diamond body, what we are doing, I love this because you've even got the mirror image here at the bottom, so you've not just got the pyramid, you've actually got the diamond. When we work with a diamond, we are working with the recoherence, the splitting of source light into all of its components so that we can understand all of the frequencies as much as possible that make up our source essence. And we can combine all of those frequencies back in. So those of you who have worked with me will understand that one of the terms I use in association with the diamond is coherence. Because what the diamond does in reverse, and that's exactly it, if you had to shine all of the colors of the electromagnetic spectrum back through that prism, it would combine them all back into that source light. So it is a very, very powerful analogy. So even though we are only working with the sort of visible manifestation, the tiny, tiny aspect of the electromagnetic spectrum that we can see, there are broad-reaching understandings as far as the electromagnetic spectrum and the diamond and color frequencies are concerned, because we start becoming aware of the frequencies and the different colors that fall outside of the visible spectrum as we do the diamond work. So it is much, much more expansive. Now, just to give you a perspective in terms of the electromagnetic spectrum and visible light, this is the full electromagnetic spectrum as we are aware of it at the moment, and that ranges from increasing wavelengths, so very long, slow waves, which we know as radio waves, and those where they are long or increasing in wavelength, they decrease in frequency. So it is a slow, low frequency. So it's long, slow waves that actually have a lot of power. And then this end of the spectrum, we actually get very, very high frequency things like we start moving into ultraviolet X-rays, gamma rays, the cosmic rays, very, very high frequency um, electromagnetic waves with decreased wavelength. So what you get is you get very, very tightly packed waves of a much, much higher frequency and a much smaller wavelength. So there is a smaller gap between the waves and they come very quickly and very fast. So when we look at the color spectrum, the visible light spectrum within the context of the whole electromagnetic spectrum, we can see how minute our visible concept or our visible accessibility is and how much more we can actually access across the spectrum, for instance, when we do work with the diamond. But this is what we're going to be. Even the information in these waves and frequencies are just incredible. So to learn this language, we then can begin expanding it. So you can see, if we look at the color spectrum, we start with red, which is long, slow, lots of power waves. It might take a while to get the engine going, but when it goes, it's full of power and full of energy. Up to this end of the spectrum, which is the violet end, which is the very, very high frequency, that's sort of associated with the crown chakra, with our connection with spirit, with the high frequency light waves. So it's like, if you think about the waves upon a beach, for instance, these would be your rollers, your waves that take a while to build up, but when they hit the beach, they crash with an enormous amount of power. So hence, why anger can be actually very destructive and be a very powerful force. Whereas these waves on this side are like the gentle little waves that just lap at the shore, rather than those big rolling waves that can impact us in a very intense way. This is intense, but in a different way because it's constant. It's kind of like lots of little waves all the time. And that's really what our relationship with spirit becomes like. Get used to that higher frequency essence and bombardment, if you like. So just to put those colors into perspective and the various wavelengths, so the one lot is slow and we move up the frequency range up to higher frequency colors. Okay, doke. So I'm going to have a look at some of the notes and the actual building up of the color mandala, just to give you some additional insight here. Let's have a look. So I'm not going to read through all of this, but color therapy is not anything that's really new to us in this modern world. Color therapy is something that has been used for eons. There is lots of evidence that it was actually used and used very successfully by many of the ancient civilizations, pardon that. Civilizations and temples, healing temples in Egypt, in ancient Greece, in China and India, they absolutely knew and understood the healing and balancing powers of color. Of course, they also understood about sound, but the power and the language of light was something that was inherent to those cultures and their natural ways of healing and balancing themselves. So what's really strange is, sort of coming into the 20th century, even I think as recently as the 19th century, there was probably a lot more awareness and acceptance of the magic of light. If you think about some of the treatments that were used for TB and what have you, is those wealthy people, or even some of those individuals that were fortunate enough, they were taken out of the cities, taken into a natural environment where they had access to the soothing colors and energies of nature, or into environments and healing sanatoriums where they had a lot more light. And they found that that actually did have a beneficial healing effect, those individuals. So it's something that seems to have closed down somewhat as we started engaging with empirical world of science to a large extent. However, there's a lot of scientific validation for the healing power of light and color, and there are some amazing, amazing processes and work being done through the use of color laser lights, using colored crystals to amplify certain coherent light forms. So there are many, many ways that this is now being reapplied as a natural healing mechanism. That's a lovely comment there. In the hospital maternity wards, the rooms are different colours for mums to choose which room they want to deliver in. That's really delightful because it allows the mother then to make an intuitive choice for the colour that is going to best support her newborn. It is interesting because there are colours that we do recommend for mums that are actually giving birth. So it would be interesting to find out what colours you use in the maternity wards and what the most popular choices are for those in terms of the expectant mum's intuitive selections. So we can use color in many ways, and these are some ideas for you to perhaps look at bringing into practical use in your environment. Mm. I'm not surprised that the most popular roses are lilac and lemon. And there's a reason for that, which hopefully will become a little clearer. Okay, so there's some wonderful, wonderful sharing going on here for those of you that are sort of joining in later. Color can be used in many different ways. So you can actually charge up tinctures or charging water with specific colors and sunlight. So what you can do is you can actually get a colored jug and fill it with water, and without necessarily having in direct sunlight, is actually have it in a place where natural light is allowed to infuse, and then the water within that colored jug would take on the frequency or filter out the frequency or vibration which is the color of the gas. So that water, so a blue bottle, you would charge up your water with blue energy. So it's a very, very simple way for you to actually sort of create your own colored waters in a supportive fashion. So you might want to try that this week. Healing power of crystals. We know that there are very strong links between the colors of crystals and the particular qualities that those crystals emanate. That people actually connect with. So there is a very strong link between the color of the crystal and the healing quality of the crystal. So you start taking note of the colors of the crystals that you're drawn to and how you can use those by bringing them into your environment. The beauty of nature by extracting the flower, herb, and plant essences. This is really, really interesting because when you start looking at aromatherapy and essential oils, for instance, what you find is that the qualities of particular essential oils are directly linked with the colors of the flowers of those particular plants. So if you take, for instance, lavender. Lavender is a lilac color. The flower is a blue lilac color. And the blues and lilacs are actually colors that are associated with calmness, with soothing, with restfulness. And that's exactly what lavender does. It actually brings in, they're also antiseptic, so there is very much a healing aspect. So that soothing quality could be applied to the skin, as well as it being psychologically soothing or emotionally soothing. So that's lavender, for instance. If, on the other hand, you take the flowers of the evening primrose is yellow. It's a beautiful yellow flower. And what are the extracts of evening primrose used for? Evening primrose oil is actually used as a rebalancing for the digestive system. And yellow as a color is associated with the stomach, with the solar plexus chakra, and with the stomach and the digestive system, and with upliftment and overall health. So physical health. So there is a physical element to it. There is a balancing of the digestive system, soothing of the stomach, etc., as a consequence of the various omega-3s and the contents of evening primrose oil. And so there's lots and lots of different ways in which we begin to understand the links between color and its language throughout nature and throughout our living world, and how we can use that. So we can use it by bringing flowers, colored flowers, into our environment, by using essential oils that link us with the color of a particular plant, that sort of thing. So many ways. Vibrational healing resonance of color, color through light, as I was talking about the sort of light treatments using different light bulbs and that kind of thing. So there's loads and loads of different ways in which we connect. So the oils and the sprays that we work with in terms of Penny's products are very gentle, and they are combined with essential oils. So it's essential oils that represent those colors. And the important thing about working with color is to allow our intuitive self, our higher self, to assist us in making the choices that will support us in bringing coherence and bringing balance, restoring balance to our entire physical, emotional, mental, and psychological bodies. Because color works with us at all of those levels. It gives us insight into our emotions, into our physical well-being, into our mental attitudes. So when you share your understanding or insights about color with other individuals, it just becomes quite fascinating for them. So it's like somebody is reading them like a book. So we work intuitively, and we use the workbook, which is left-brained. And I just want to share something on that score with you. It's just another little insert. One of the I was doing a talk once at a gathering of people, and one of the women had actually just been to one of these. It wasn't quite a Color Me Beautiful workshop. It was one of these using colored scarves and, you know, sort of looking at skin tones and telling people what colors are right for them, which is very prescriptive. So it's not always the colors that that individual might need. And I said to her, okay, so she'd been to this earlier on in the day, and I said, how did you find it? She says, oh, you know, she says, a little bit fluffy, all of the rest of it, wasn't too sure about it, blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay. So I just said to her, stood there, and I said, okay, tell me what your favorite color is. And she said to me, oh, turquoise, I wear it all the time. And in fact, she was wearing something with turquoise on that day. And I just went into, okay, so this is kind of the way that you would likely behave given these sets of circumstances. Your partner probably says these kinds of things about you. You probably find that you feel emotionally this way and that way about certain things, that you have certain beliefs, that you know, sort of close your emotions off behind a wall. And I think I probably spent maybe 3 to 4 minutes giving her some insight into herself through the fact that turquoise was her favorite color, and that was the color that she kept on being drawn to. And she looked at me and she held up her hand and she just said, please stop. Please stop, because I'm totally freaked. She says, because nobody actually knows me or understands me as well as you have just done in 5 minutes, just through understanding color. Um, so there's a lot of insight that we can gain and support other people with through this language. Sorry guys, I just want to, I've missed the rest of the comments here. I can't, there it is. So can I actually, I'm just going to respond to this comment as well, because it's all part of the learning. What if you have an avoidance to a certain color? Do you look at the opposite to reveal the issue? have a client who hates yellow, and interestingly, she has a stomach ulcer. Yes, there is a lot that you would look at colors. You would actually look at the complements of yellow, and you would look at the challenging aspects of yellow. And I'm going to go into some of that now. So she would have some of the very challenging yellow aspects that she needs to deal with. So, but she would need both colors in order to restore balance. To answer that question, Rose. So you will get some insights into how you can actually do this as we go along. So let's have a look at this. Oh, sorry, I've just put a mark on that. Everybody has an opinion on color. I don't really want to read through everything in the workbook because you're going to get that. We use colors to describe how we are feeling. I already mentioned that in the beginning. So you're going to learn how you can use it to enhance your life. Light creates color and form and is produced by the sun in different wavelengths. We've had a look at the electromagnetic spectrum. We've had a look at how prisms refract light. In fact, the sun does give off light, both visible and invisible, at all wavelengths or many wavelengths of the electromagnetic spectrum. So let's just have a look at the molecular structure and pigmentation of objects and how we perceive color. Sorry, let me just get this back up here. So when light waves bounce off different objects, they create the sensation of light. It means that our eyes are perceiving what is being reflected off an object and not the energy necessarily of the object itself. So it is the reflected light that gives us information about that particular object. It means that everything we see is reflected light. So low frequency waves register in our brains as the color red, which I mentioned about the spectrum, whereas high frequency waves are perceived as the color violet. So if we think about the molecular structures and pigmentations of any object, whether it's an item of clothing or an item of furniture or something out in nature, the molecular structure coheres in such a way that the light rays are either absorbed or reflected in varying speeds or intensity. So objects that appear dark have actually absorbed more of the light rays. So they actually hold more light. And I just want to use that as a reference back to the diamond light work and the black diamond, which I say the black diamond contains all of that unmanifest light because the darkness holds all of that light and it doesn't reflect the light back out. So it doesn't reflect as much of the light. So an object that is lighter is not holding on to as much light. It is reflecting all of it back out. So when light is broken down, either reflected or absorbed into different wavelengths, we see it as the different frequencies, as the colors of the rainbow. So a green leaf that has the sun shining on it, all of the other colors are absorbed by the leaf, and it is the color green which is actually reflected back out. So leaves, in fact, well, I suppose any object, sort of depending on what it's actually absorbing. But they absorb a huge amount. They use the red light, which fuels up the photosynthesis, for instance. And the green that is reflected back gives us information about the growth and the opportunities that that particular item as a food item would bring into our energy system. So the foods that we eat, the colors of the foods that we eat actually are information and ways of absorbing various frequencies and aspects of the color spectrum as well. So eating colored foods is another way that we can get those colors into our system. And that's why this reflection absorption aspect is why the complementary color, the opposite of what you are seeing, is actually also important in the restoration of balance. So the hidden aspect of green, for instance, is red, because that is contained within it. The green is reflected back out, and the red is actually contained within that item. So you actually have aspects of both colors that you are working with. So there's the hidden colors as well as the obvious colors that we would work with to restore balance. So I hope that makes a little bit of sense for you. Um, so I'm just waiting here for any comments in the chat room. Okay, that's great. I'm glad you've actually, that is making sense. So let's just have a look here. Um, I don't think that you guys here, it's necessary for me to even go into this aspect that we are beings of energy, because I think that's an inherent understanding because of the very nature of all of the work that we all do. We all have that inherent understanding that we are beings of energy. So therefore, we respond to our energetic environments and to the colors in our environment in very powerful and very often potent ways. So we are surrounded by energy fields, we are surrounded by color emanating from, and we are interacting with it all the time, and they are very physical manifestations of imbalances in those areas. Okay. This sensitivity is really quite interesting because I'd like to just share another very story with you, as energy beings and as energy systems. Is that a number of years ago, I was actually attending a one-day workshop at a place called the Malmaison in Newcastle. Lovely hotel, kind of a boutique type hotel, but it was all draped out in violets and magentas. A lot of violet, a lot of purple. And it was so interesting for me because at that time, I was very into my magenta colors. So I was needing a lot of grounding. I was needing a lot of red. But what I found being in that environment is that I could not sit in that violet environment for longer than an hour without starting to space out. The violet, the frequency of that, I was interacting with it so intensely that every hour I had to go outside and get some sunshine. Thankfully, the sun was shining that day, and actually get some sunshine to help to ground myself and go for a quick walk, so that I could access more of the opposite or some of the hidden grounding energy that's actually in violet, because I just spaced out all the time. So it was very, very interesting. Yeah, so we need to be very aware of that so we can work on bringing in complementary colors that help to balance that effect if we are aware of what it can do. So, all the way along, I've sort of been given some very practical experience, some very real experiences of the power of working with color in very many different ways. So quite fascinating stuff. So let's get into some of the meat and bones, if you like. And this is in your workbook, so you will print it off. So this is now taking a look at the color wheel. And this will begin the process of you starting to understand this concept of hidden colors and complementary colors, etc., and how the color wheel is actually built up, how colors are built up. So when we think about the myriad, I mean, there's a huge spectrum of colors that we have access to, tints and shades, and sort of variations on a theme. Sort of from lilac and mauve to deep violet, and ultraviolet and luminescent violet. You really can look at all colors in the spectrum, but essentially it boils down to three key primary colors. And this is the kind of thing that we learned at school. And these are the foundational colors which are unable to be broken down into any other color. Kind of like they are absolute within themselves. So yellow, you can't really break yellow down into any other components. Yellow is yellow. It's a primary color. So yellow, blue, and red are the three primary colors that we would work with in order to build up the rest of the colors in the color spectrum. Pardon me, color spectrum. So those are your primary colors. So what we then have from these three primaries, we can then mix and match and play, and we can develop and begin creating the range of other colors from these. So the next step is that we form or we create the secondary colors. So when we combine equal quantities of two of the primaries, we actually have a new dynamic and a new energy, a new frequency, a new color. So if we combine equal quantities of yellow and blue, we get green. So green is 1 part yellow and 1 part blue. So the component of green, the hidden colors that are in there, are yellow and blue. Um, Yellow and red combined 1 to 1 give you orange. So the hidden components in orange are yellow and red. So in orange, orange acts as a buffer, for instance, for the emotional system. And red, we know, links with concepts and emotional aspects such as survival, such as anger, such as frustration, fatigue, sort of being stuck. Lots of different things. Yellow as emotional color links us with sort of aspects or elements of confusion, of sort of lack of clarity in its negative or challenging sense. So confusion. So yellow would feed into green. So when you are looking at the colors that you guys have chosen, also start looking at the hidden colors in there and what they might be saying to you, the information that they might give. So your secondary colors, you've got green and orange, and then of course down here the other secondary color, which is 1 part blue, 1 part red, gives you violet. So the two component colors in there to be aware of are blue and red. Blue is one end of the spectrum, and red is the other. So the two of them balanced actually put you into the violet. So those are the primary and secondary colors. Now, if we go back to the color mandala, which I shared with you, and this you can print off, it's in your workbook, so you can print it off in color. Then you can actually mix your secondary colors with a primary, and you get the tertiary colors. And Rhoda, you were drawn to one of the tertiaries, you were drawn to olive. And this is what I was just sort of beginning to explain earlier, is that if you take green mixed with yellow, you get olive. Now, yellow is a primary, and green contains 1 part yellow and 1 part blue. So you've actually got 2 parts of yellow and 1 part blue in this color. So yellow is a key component in this particular tertiary color, in the olive. So one would actually take a really significant look at what's going on with the yellow. And sometimes yellow can be a very harsh, what we call acidic color to work with. So it can be better to go for one of the tertiary colors that contains a lot of yellow, but that softens it with one of the other primaries, and it makes it easier to work with. Think about your client with the ulcer. Yellow, acidic, too much of an acid environment, too intense. What she probably needs is some gold combined with one of the soothing colors from this end of the spectrum. That's just a little bit of an addition for you. So the tertiary colors contain two components of the primary color, which is directly next to it, and 1 part of the primary that is furthest away. So olive, in fact, contains 2 parts yellow and 1 part blue. Turquoise, on the other hand, which is a tertiary color, is a combination of green and blue. And green is a combination of blue and yellow. So what you have is you've got 2 parts of this particular primary color, 2 parts blue and 1 part yellow in turquoise. So you've got more blue in there. So if you take magenta as a tertiary color, you've actually got 2 parts red. That's what I was saying. There's a lot of red in magenta. So you've got 2 parts red and 1 part blue further away. Coral. Coral is a lighter shade of uh, the pinks. We start going into the pink spectrum, but the founding color for that is red. So it's red that has light shone through it, gives you pink. So pink is a more intense form of red. I'm going to give you a little bit of insight there in a moment. But coral as a color would then contain 2 parts of red, because this is the primary closest to it, or pink, 2 parts of pink, and 1 part of yellow. So if you were looking to make the color up, that's what you would look at. Gold contains 2 parts yellow and 1 part red, because it's a combination of yellow and orange. Orange is a combination of yellow and red. You've got 2 parts yellow in gold, 1 part red. So does this make sense to you guys in terms of the making up? So you've got your primaries, your secondaries, and your tertiaries. And your tertiaries actually do represent ways of moving into working with and using those colors rather than going for the solidness of the primaries, for instance. So they are ways of accessing the frequencies that are slightly moderated by the other. What's the tertiary? Orange is a primary. Sorry, orange is a secondary. Orange is a combination of 1-to-1 yellow and red. So the tertiary colors associated with this, you've got gold and you've got coral. Coral is a mix of orange and pink or red. So they're the lighter form of red. So in that you've got 2 parts of red and 1 part of yellow because of the orange. Gold is a combination of yellow and orange, so you've got 2 parts yellow, 1 part red. Indigo is the tertiary color that is a combination of blue, which is a primary, and violet, which is a secondary. So in violet, you've got blue and red. So indigo is a combination of 2 parts blue and 1 part red. So those are the tertiary colors. And then, of course, you can start getting even more clever with the tones and the hints of color with your quaternary colors, if you like. You know, sort of with these where you start mixing your tertiaries with other tertiaries or with other primaries. Yeah, you'll need to reread it and listen to it again to sink in. But it is very interesting because when we work with color, what becomes quite fascinating is to look at the components of that color for information about what that color is saying, you know, at its fundamental level, and how information is modified through the combination of frequencies or through the combinations of the various levels or layers of color. So yeah, each one represents a modification of the primary frequency through the addition and subtraction of some of the others. So it is absolutely fascinating. Now, one of the other things that's really important for you guys to understand and to start becoming aware of too is this statement here, is that the depth of the color depends on the amount of light that is added. So when you shine the light on an issue, it intensifies it. It's like holding a magnifying glass up to an issue. So let's say your issue is emotionally in red, which is anger. If you shine a magnifying glass with pure light onto red, the color that you get is pale red, which is pink. So pink represents an intensification of the red issues. So it would be deeply buried, somebody who sacrifices themselves so completely for others that they've actually lost touch with their own anger to the point where they don't even recognize it. And that happens. That's one of the issues associated with pink. So let's say, for instance, somebody chooses, you know, we often think of pale or pastel colors as being wishy-washy. And they are anything but, because when we see those pale colors, They represent an intensification of the issue, of the underlying color. So if somebody goes for very pale aqua, kind of like this color, it's an intensification of the turquoise issues. So you would go and have a look at turquoise, and you know that they're dealing with some very, very deeply held emotional stuff. Pale blue, same thing. Very intensification, magnification of the underlying issues of that primary color. Pale lilac. Pale lilac is more intense than violet, for instance. Does that make sense, guys? So it gives us an opportunity to look at those pastel colors in a very different way, that they are very intense and not as wishy-washy, and we should not be as dismissive of them. You know, I mean, let's take, for instance, it's really interesting, take a look at people around you, and this is one of the things that you're going to do this week. I haven't written this in your notes, but it will become very interesting to take a look around at the kind of colors that people are wearing, you know, and what that may be saying about them. You know, start noticing if you see a trend with people wearing specific colors. But, you know, groups of people like, you know, sort of the older generation, for instance, they don't do it so much anymore, but certainly a decade or 2 decades ago, the older, say, over 60s, over 70s, always went for these pastel colors. I mean, nowadays, I think there's a lot more in terms of selection for the older generation in very, very bright colors. So what this really represents is that generation coming from a space where they did not have the tools, and they were not given the management processes. Lavender rinses and beige clothes, yes. They did not have the tools to be able to deal with the deeper emotional aspects within themselves. They came from a generation that was taught, sacrifice yourself, you keep quiet for the sake of keeping peace, you shut up and you just get on with it, you just deal with life. So there was no acknowledgement at all of their inner emotional state. And hence, you know, you sort of went through that where there was a whole generation who was wearing these pastel colors. And what that was really saying is that within them, there was an intensification, a very intense denial of their true colors, their true personalities, their personal needs, because many of their personal needs were sacrificed at the altar of everybody else. Sacrificed for the family, sacrificed for the community. Don't forget, they'd just come out of a war situation. So there was a lot of sacrificing for the greater good. That was a belief that would have been inculcated into that generation. So it was like there's no time and no space to really focus on yourself. Everything was really about community and for the greater good. So we do, you know, we are able to also then connect the language of color to some of the greater social issues and cultural issues that we see happening out there. So it's very, very broad ranging and informative. Whereas now, you know, you do see a lot more. I notice it even with my mum, who's now in her 70s. And my mum goes for a lot more of these vibrant colors, which is really beautiful to see because I've actually seen her progressing from going from sort of the paler shades to much more definite shades and definite colors. So it's like she's finally finding her own self and her own personality through the process. Pastel colors, while they represent an intensification of challenges, can also represent an intensification and a magnification of the gifts, because that is something that is really, really important to recall and to uphold when we are working with color, is that we live in a world of duality. So even when we are looking at color and color frequencies, there is an inherent polarity with every single color. So there is its harmonic aspect and there is its challenging aspect. And that we need to start becoming aware of. So whenever we are working with somebody with color, it's not just highlighting what the challenge may be. So say, for instance, green, or red represents suppressed anger. Red as a gift is amazing. It's powerful. It's energizing. It's energetic. So yes, in the challenging aspect, it might represent anger, frustration, and all of the rest. But in its harmonious aspect, it is a vital component of being able to bring about change in our life. And that is the same with every single color. It has a polarity, it has its positive, and it has its challenge. So whenever we do color readings or we work with other people with color, I find that it is always very significant and important to leave individuals on a positive note. So you give them something to strive for, something to attain through accessing. If they deal with the challenges in any particular color, whatever their color choices are, they will realize and come to recognize the gifts. So, so that's a primary understanding in terms of where we're going to go with this, is that there are two. There's the challenge and uh, the gift in every single color that we're going to look at and work with. So we have gone through those. Primaries, secondaries, tertiaries, challenges, and gifts. Let's just see, is this page coming up here? No, that one's not coming up, but this one is. Oh, it may just be. There we go. So, you ladies that are tuning in, I'm sure would be quite familiar with the concept of chakras. Okay, there's another question just come in, so I'm going to have a look at that quickly. What would grey reveal thinking about school uniforms? Yeah, well, grey is safe. If we think about grey, grey is also an aspect of the blues and the violets. It's almost like a washed out blue. It is safe. It is about conformity. Okay, so if we look here, this sort of, you could almost start, if you start mixing these colors, if you mix sort of pale lilac and pale blue, you'd get a grayish color. So you're looking at an intensification of these issues. So there is an aspect of conformity which represents the challenges of blue and of violet. So you've got authoritarianism, you've got control, you've got don't think for yourself, you've got no recognition or very little recognition of the spiritual aspect. And in fact, too much of this color without anything to balance it, these sides of the spectrum, one of the key indicators in the challenging aspects here that has a health and physical impact is depression. And that is why we see and experience so much of that in the Northern Hemisphere over the winter months. Because if you think about the colors of the clouds in winter, they are shades of gray and blue, sort of like that lilac, violety blue color. But all of those are aspects of gray. And with very little sunshine to balance it, you end up with this intensification of these issues, too much. And people kind of like zone out. There's no energy. There is a withdrawal. And they zone out because there's not enough of these energizing colors to lift that grayness, which is why you get that seasonal affective disorder, because there's not enough of the balancing colors to support it. So there's this huge amounts, I think as you've probably gathered, huge amounts of information that we can start accessing through our understandings of color. So any school, I can understand from a cost perspective that many schools would choose grey as a founding color, a foundational color for school uniforms, but then I would suggest that it always needs to be balanced by something on the opposite side of the spectrum that actually helps to lift those colors. One of the things that I've actually done for winter this year is I've gone out and I've actually bought a red scarf, an orange scarf, and a yellow scarf. Bright, bright colors, so that I can wear a foundational gray or brown or sort of one of the colors that's in the shops, but I can lift it with a colored scarf. And that doesn't need to be expensive. It can be very, very economical to do. So you can lift and balance your color spectrum that way in a very economical, cost-effective way. Now, what I've actually done, we're already at 26 minutes past, so we're already coming up to the hour and a half. So the whole section that I wanted to do with you guys on chakras, I'm going to leave for you to go through the first few sections of the notes and we'll go through it again next week. So you'll probably start accessing some of your own insights through this process too. But I think we have, because of the work that we've been doing, a very clear understanding that the chakras are the key energy interchanges. They are the ways in which we exchange energy and information with our environment. They also tell us about our energetic state, and each chakra vibrates at a different frequency in accordance with the colors of the rainbow. So each chakra is associated with specific colors. So here we look at the 7 colors of the chakras, but we also have minor chakras, and we have variations and grades of the colors between the chakras, etc., etc. So much can be discerned about our energetic state through looking at the activities of the chakras and relating that back to the color frequency that is required as well. So just having a look at this chart, this is actually in your workbook. You can actually see it gives you a basic rundown of the key associations and colors of each of the chakras of the body and the areas of the body that they actually govern. So the root chakra, for instance, doesn't only is not only associated with its traditional area at the base of the spine or the perineum, it actually governs the whole of the lower part of the body. And it's about movement and change, and here you see if change and direction is a key color associated with green, you see why it's balanced with green, space, direction, and relationships. So you can kind of start seeing how they correlate with one another. So I'm going to leave you to have a look at that chart, and I just want to explain the first 3 chakras are in the notes here. So we have, I'm going to give you the base chakra, the sacral, and the solar plexus. So I'd like you to do some concentration on these 3 chakras, because you both have colors that incorporate, your color choices incorporate these lower chakra energies. Now, one of the things to understand about the chakras is that the chakras can be either overactive, they can be out of balance in either way. The same way that colors have polarity, they can be challenging or they can be harmonious. The chakras can be overactive or underactive. And depending on the state of the chakra, it will give us some idea or indication of what color could best be used to support that particular chakra rebalancing. So very quickly, let's have a look at red. And an overactive base chakra, which is associated with the color red, if that is overactive, you will find an individual who is prone to explosions, okay, aggressive, obsessive, unable to recognize limits or boundaries in others, somebody who's constantly pushing other people's boundaries, hyperactive, always busy, never time to sit down, too much red energy, run, power hungry, that red energy is fueling them in their hunger for power, and it's generally power over themselves or other people, and recklessness. So what an overactive base chakra would need, this chakra also has a huge impact on the red blood cells. And if you've got high blood pressure, you would never use the color red for somebody who has high blood pressure. You would use a complementary color like blue or green. So if somebody has an overactive base chakra, overactive red, they have too much red running in the body, too much red energy. Let's go back to the color chart. Too much of this means they need a balancing color to calm it down. Where are you going to go? You're going to go to the opposite end of the spectrum. And you're going to go to green or blue to calm the chakra down. So this is where you would start using complementary colors. You don't want to calm it down too much because then you have no energy for movement. So once you've got this calmed down and the energy is more balanced, then you could start working with it by using both sets of colors in order to balance the movement and direction, or sorry, the change of heart, the change of space with the right movement, that it's not necessarily, I'm thinking the word spontaneous, but it's not spontaneous, impulsive, because too much red leads to impulsivity. So you would use the opposite side of the spectrum to balance an overactive chakra. So if it is underactive, you would find, for instance, the following characteristics. Somebody who is manipulative, so they need energy because their chakra is blocked. They're needing red energy. So they tend to manipulate others or they become your energy vampires. They manipulate others in terms of trying to get energy from them because they have given up their own power in some way, shape, or form. They can be overly cautious about taking steps or making moves, constantly needing approval and validation, exhausted, too much for other people, or they are stuck and they bottle up anger. Do you know how much energy it takes to hold anger in your body? Incredible amounts of energy to hold that in. So you end up with no energy to do anything in your life. So you bottle anger and aggression. So it's really good to have an explosion from time to time, but not at people. To be able to release the walls around that anger in such a way that it doesn't harm anybody else, but it frees up your energy. So you can then have somebody who is calm, 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 and then has an explosion. Overreacts at possibly inappropriate times. So somebody that has an underactive base chakra would need a lot of red to help to balance them. Red in itself can be harsh, and this is where magenta as a balancing color is also very, very good to fuel the root chakra. And this takes me back to the story I was telling you in the beginning. So here you've got magenta, 2 parts red, 1 part blue. So you've got a lot of red in magenta. Okay, is that when I actually changed countries, I was going for a lot of green, so I needed a lot of green to support the change in space, and I came to the UK. I went through very, very difficult and challenging times, and I had been listening to my guidance, and I knew I was here because I'd been guided to by spirit, but I was so bloody angry. I was so angry because of the challenges that I was then faced with, because it wasn't what I had expected. I had expected that because I was doing the right thing that everything would be easy. But it wasn't, because this was now the opportunity for my soul to really rise to the challenges. But what happened during the first 2 years is that all of this anger, I was bottling it up and not realizing it. And I kept on going into meditation and asking the questions, but I wasn't acknowledging how angry I was. And there I was going out to the shops buying magenta after magenta after magenta jersey. It might be too stimulating. You might need too stimulating at night. This is one of the things that I always say about red. Avoid red bedding at all costs. Chiefly, because red, we very often think about the associations. We associate it with the red light district, with brothels, with red lights, activity. nighttime activity. So it could stimulate too much of that red energy at night. If you balance it with another color, you can balance it with green, then it would, something that would be kinder, if I can just make a comment, because Rose has made a comment that she wanted something warm, that felt warm because she feels cold. Orange would be kinder than red. Or you can take the magenta and you can balance it with gold because it is also warm, but it's not as energizing. You could also balance it with green. But green cushions, or perhaps get, sort of striped pillowcases, or other decorative pillowcases, or something to bring another color into your environment to balance out too much magenta. Take note of your sleeping patterns. If you're sleeping okay with it, you might think that, you're sleeping okay, but if you start waking up exhausted, you're expending too much energy. Your body's not getting the rest that it needs at night. There's too much energy happening here. So there's a little bit of insight into your notes. So what I've given you for just week 1, so you can review everything that we've done so far, and you have the first 3 chakras. So you've actually got, and you've got the overactive and underactive. So you can take a look at those, take a look at your life, start journaling, start making notes of your insights, because you will find as you go along that you will be receiving a lot of insights into your own behaviors, your own patterns, that sort of thing. So I've included the root chakra, the sacral, and the solar plexus as your first ones. So that's a huge amount of information for you guys to integrate today, but it sets the foundation. And your homework, which is on a separate sheet in your workbook, so your homework for this week, is take your chosen color from earlier on in the session and incorporate it into your life in as many ways as you can imagine. So some suggestions are colored clothing, scarves, gloves, all of the rest of it. In your food choices, start becoming more aware. Room accessories, candles, flowers, meditation and visualization, color breathing. So you just breathe in that color. Now what you might like to do is to try working with the color that you have chosen and its complement. So you could take a look at the color wheel and say, what's the complement of this color? And you could breathe in one color, breathe out its opposite, and then reverse the process. Very, very simple meditative exercise. Notice how you feel doing it each way, and we'll do some feedback at the beginning of the session next week. So lots of ways that you can work, but I want you to focus on the color that you chose so that you start becoming aware of how it's working and impacting in your life. Keep a journal. Note how you feel each time you're exposed. Be aware of your thought patterns, emotional states, behaviors, sleep patterns, and so on. Notice if, over the course of the week, you become more aware of different colors that you were not initially drawn to, which is that story that I told you earlier about the turquoise and then suddenly the orange. If this happens, note what kind of impact the color may be having on you at the various levels, and I'm talking about the new color. So have a look at how you are responding to it. And what it might be bringing to you. Allow your intuition to start playing with this, because when you do allow it free rein, you will be surprised at what you already know. So we have only scratched the surface, and we've gone for an hour and 40 minutes. So are you guys quite okay with those homework exercises for this week? And thank you so much for joining me. I just love working with color in so many different ways. So I'm just going to say, enjoy playing with it. Play with this, because the more you play with it, the more your intuitive connection with it actually comes to light. We have 6 weeks. We have a lot of stuff to cover in the 6 weeks. So enjoy your playing with it this week. What I will do is the color meditation, I'm only going to give you next week, the free CD, the MP3, because I want you to work with these exercises with your chosen colors as a lead-in for this week. So do that. Have a look through your notes. Make a note of any insights. If you want to email me in the meantime, then please email me with any comments or questions, and I'll hopefully get back to you as soon as possible with all of that. So thank you very much for being a part of this first teleclass. Hope you've enjoyed it, and thank you so much for your inspiration, for the colors that you bring to life and to all of us. So thank you so much. Thank you. Until next week, I will be sending you out the details. So until next week, have fun, ladies.